Hello, lords and ladies of the internet. I'm pretty sure we're live now, and I'm the King of Candor, and this is my guest, Tio. How you doing today, my friend?
Hello. I'm doing well. A nice, slow,
Hello,
relaxing
Lord.
day. Oh,
Excellent. Don't forget, you might be hearing me in the back because I am live now. So, with that said, today's episode, as I announced in the Discord, we're going to be attempting to help you world build and fix some Game Master problems. I know a lot of people have concerns and issues and a lot of nervousness when it comes to game design, so I figured I'd make an episode today where I come on and just generally help people who want help with their game design. And if you want to post your questions, feel free to post them here live in the chat. I will be reading them and going through them. And I've already collected a handful of other Game Master advice questions beforehand, so we could start from there. So, the first one that I'm going to go off of is somebody who recently asked me, how do I deal with my players constantly outwitting me with traps? Basically, basically the gist of it was the players kept solving the Game Master's puzzles before he really had them fully set up, and he wanted to challenge the players. I actually don't think this is a problem. I think this is a misunderstanding. If your players are excited and really engaged and happy to solve your traps, that's a good thing. So you don't really have a problem. If anything, you have a wild success. Now, I understand wanting maybe to give a little bit more of a challenging experience to them, but you got to remember, you're one game master. You got one brain. You might be really smart, but there's at least 4 up to 8 people around your table, I've heard. So there's naturally going to be more brain power there. The sheer collective amount of people will solve your problems. So it's okay for games guys who really like to solve traps. Maybe include a puzzle or a riddle, like switch up the exact variation of it. Just because they like to do that, it's not a bad thing.
do you think it would be advantageous for new game masters to try to build traps with experienced game masters to try to make them a little more difficult?
You could. I think that one of the big issues in the RPG design is people don't know what traps are for. Because
Mhm.
traps are really for two things. Even though they function the same, the actual mechanic around them is different. Some end has traps as resource extractors. This is a lot of what you see in the early versions of D&D. The idea behind traps isn't so much can the players figure this out? It's I need to take 20 hit points away from them and 10% of the resources so the boss fights feel tougher just because they have expended stuff to get here. If that's the way
Mhm.
you're designing traps, like those are pitfalls, those are spinning traps, those are in Skyrim when you're walking and randomly hit a pressure plate, those are the kind of traps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They're meant to just punish you a little bit, give you a little heart, and then you move on. Traps are
Mhm.
meant to be more cerebral, where it's like, hey, essentially we have a reward here, but there's almost like a puzzle to get to it, or like Indiana Jones, where he's got to figure out how much the idol weighs before picking it up, and if he gets it right, he doesn't get the boulder to kill him. Stuff like that. It's design them more like puzzles. Then you backdoor into them, and make a lethal version of it as a trap. Essentially, the failure is you activate the trap.
Okay.
So that's how I would go about it. And then once you as a game master know which one of these two things you want to design, that's when you can really dial down to, well, succeeding it.
That makes sense.
All right.
Just
It
a
look,
way to, yeah,
yeah, it looks like we got our
think of.
first question here, though, from
Oh,
James. Here's my first question. What's the best level for a warlock to die to ensure he, at the very least, can be lord over some place in his lair of hell, like a Cambion or even better, a pit fiend? And more importantly, how would you make your player earn that? Like make them do some heinous stuff or just do any impossible task? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, James, mechanically speaking, there is no point when you get out of your warlock contract. If I was the game master, I would never allow you to get out of your warlock contract like that. It's too easy for you to say, "Oh, I'm just going to die at level 6 and because I'm powerful enough, I'll be turned into a powerful demon." Oh, no, 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 no. You got to remember that sure, you might be powerful here and you might be cool and really tough. Demons are cruel and capricious creatures. They want you to suffer. They want to break you down so they can now have full control over you. It doesn't matter how powerful you are in the mortal plane. Your power will still be there after they've crushed your soul and ground you up into a more usable form. That's why you get turned into those nasty slug monsters when you die. Alternatively, the way around that is if you want to, which clearly the character you're writing wants to become a demon of some sort, that should be something that you negotiate with the demon that you've taken your contract out from. This is why I think Warlocks are such both really cool and really terrible player characters. They automatically imply a lot of world building and game design that I feel like people are just simply not ready for when they are game mastering for people and even players playing them. And I feel like it really hurts the system to have them here without any of the support. Hello, Des. Welcome back. We're just in the middle of answering James's questions.
Yeah, pulling up.
Sure, take your time. Now, to go off of the... So, here's the thing, James. Devils are actually better than demons. Devils have laws. Devils follow the rules. Demons do not. They are chaotic and they are monstrous. So don't make.
So with a demon.
Go ahead.
Like
So with the devil, you want a proper prenup. With a demon, you're basically out of luck.
Yes, exactly.
Because demon is like the small like imp guys in Baldur's Gate 3 versus devil would be like Raphael in Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, actually, so that is true, but not for the reasons you're thinking. Demons and devils are actually divided into two separate pits of hell. Devils are lawful evil. Demons are chaotic evil. And they've had a never-ending thousands of years thing called the Blood War, where I think it's something like 800 septillion people have died in it every day or some stupid thing. Like, you think the Marvel multiverse stuff is crazy? There have been multiversal wars that have been going on for decades in this setting. So knowing that, James, to help with your question, making a pact with the devil, they still will want to crush you. They still have some capricious, villainous love for just ruining your life. You need to renegotiate your contract and ask for better terms. Right now, you've given up, essentially, if you're playing this right, you've given up your soul. There's no reason for them to get anything else. They already own you. You are already completely under their control. They have you by your balls, dude. You don't get to negotiate anymore. If they kill you at any time, they already get you. So you need to then try to use your newfound power as you get levels to renegotiate the contract. You don't ever want to die. Essentially, to me, warlocks have one story they must tell in the D&D games when they're related to devils, that they must kill their patron and get removed from the contract. If your game master allows that or not, that's up to them. But I personally would never let my player become a devil or anything like that, or any port of, hell, because they are so incredibly weak. Players do not even scale to the monsters of hell. That's just the way I run through things. Or else every tiefling would just join hell and become superpowered immediately. People seem to misunderstand when they're thinking about hell and thinking about the way that they work, that they need your soldiers. They don't need you. They want to torture you. They get enjoyment out of it. They need your soul because your soul powers energy and your soul can do things. But once you've been broken down and defeated, then they can take your soul and do it. You got to remember, they have the infernal engines, which are these giant cars that drive around, and that's why Karlach has all those very disturbing holes in her chest. They're like, literally engines that you'd put in a car. But instead of being powered by gasoline, they're powered by soul coins, which are the crushed and compressed, hatred of a soul put into basically a quarter. That only lasts 24 hours, though. So you got to think of, they've got thousands of these cars all running around hell attacking each other, and each car needs a quarter every 24 hours. It's very goofy, some of the stuff in that they have. But knowing that, that's why you're not going to be able to get out of your pact just by dying. You dying will get you put in hell, and the demon or the devil will laugh at you for being so stupid for negotiating with them. The only way to fix your pact is while you're alive. Because the second you die, you're done to them.
Mhm.
So James says, so renegotiation is the best way to get a better form after death. He doesn't want to be special time meat.
Abused.
He wants to be making deals. Yeah. So, yeah, that's your goal. But James, honestly, any demon worth their salt will not let you do that. You're gonna have to go
Yeah.
above this demon to this demon's boss to be able to work at their level. You're trying to take his job essentially. Whoever gave you the demonic deal or devilish deal, that's their job you're trying to take. You never hire the guy who replaces you. If this guy is going to do your job better than you, you make sure he gets stuck in the paper department. You make sure he gets stuck in the janitorial staff, far away from threatening you, until you're way beyond promoted. So you're going to have to go to his boss to hire him. So you know, or you kill him. You kill him, maybe his boss will then call you out and say, "Hey, you know, we've called you out. You know, you're going on here. You want to join the team?" I still think a player goal of going to hell and becoming a devil is a terrible one, because to me it's very lame. It's very much in that 90s edginess. But like, if that's a goal you want to do, go for it. Just stop trying to start cults in every game I play with you. It's weird.
I've got a very good game for you, Cult of the Lamb. You'll love it.
Yeah, they just added the sex update.
Shut up! I knew that was coming up as soon as.
Hey, Power World's getting
Hey.
an update too soon.
Well, I don't have.
They already had the ability to make eggs. They can't have an update like that.
They probably can update the way breeding works, because it's kind of lame, to be honest.
It is weird that it's just take these two numbers, add them together, and divide.
Yeah, it's strange. But that's besides the point. So I hope that answers your question there, James. Feel free to ask any more if you need to. All right, so while we wait for more, another one of the pre-designed questions I came up with is somebody was asking, how do you come up with new and interesting quests? And, you know, they basically hit a roadblock where they don't know what else they need to do. I would tell them right now that you don't need to come up with new and interesting quests. That's a misnomer. You need to come up with new and interesting quests to your players. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel here. When you're trying to figure out something, find something you really like and steal it. One of the best places to get basically free infinite quests is go to the Wikipedia or the USP for any of the Elder Scrolls games. Click a random quest and read it. And if it's interesting, steal it. Change the names around, change the races of the creatures around, and you've got a free quest. It's all designed there for you. I don't know why more people don't just do that when they need a quickie quest or they're looking for inspiration. You've got thousands of years of game design that people will look at and be like, oh, wow, you know, we've got these cool quests. Or look online, see what quests people talk about highly. You know, if there's a certain group of World of Warcraft raids that people really love, look into it. Do they like them because it's mechanically interesting, or is it because they got interesting stuff going on in the quest world? Either one that you can get ideas from to be inspired by.
Yeah.
Yeah, truly a radiant idea.
Yeah. And it's just like, don't feel bad about taking from these places. Taking from these places and being inspired by these other creators, that's how all of storytelling has all been created for thousands of years. There's currently a bit of a controversy that people are trying to say that, and I've had some questions about it in my server, which links are in the description below. Feel free to come join us. That people are saying that Wagner's ring cycle, or Nibelung, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know any German.
Nibelungen.
Yeah.
Oh,
We need to go
I'm
get
sure I
Mr.
butchered that. I
City
need to
Sea
look at
Salt
how
out
that's
here.
spelled.
Yeah, we need to. Somebody call Cinny. He will pronounce it for us.
Well,
But,
I know German, but I just need to look at it because I'm going off of vague memory of how it's spelled.
Once you
Okay.
find it, read it for us.
Der Ring des Nibelungen.
Yes, it's the ring of the Nibelings, I believe, in English.
Nibelung, yeah.
Yeah. But the idea is it's a fantasy story about rings of power and dwarves, and there's quests, against it, and there's dragons and all these elder beings, and people were kind of asking, like, oh, is this just a ripoff? Is this what Lord of the Rings stole their ideas from? And No, not at
Wait,
all.
that's what. Wait, people think that?
Did you
Oh,
not see
wow.
that article? I can find it in the server to show you later
The
if you
only
want.
thing I heard about of it being connected was during oh shoot, what's the YouTuber? I really like his thing. Mandalore Gaming when because I really love his video on
His game,
what's it?
his video on that
On
German
the
game of it
video.
is fantastic.
No, it wasn't even German. It was like Czech, or maybe
Was it Czech?
It was either Czech or it was made by the French. It was like
Maybe it was the
every
French.
national. It was like very weird how that game came to be, but he does mention that at one point. So, but I didn't know it was like a very big thing. I thought.
Well, it's one of those things where it's clear Tolkien was inspired by this, but to say he was inspired by it is not the same as the article that was shared here, where people were basically saying that Tolkien stole all of his ideas from it. To me, that's a
Really
very
cool stuff.
different thing. To say, hey, go ahead.
Even based on just like what little it seemed like he was saying was accurate to the original story. Like the original story seems like extremely different, especially with like all the gods and the dwarves and like I mean the only thing that like you could maybe say is similar is that just the ring itself is kind of similar to
There
the
might be a little inspiration in that the Ring of the Nibelung
yeah, like the
is
ring
like
is
a musical
similar to the
drama,
Ring of
but
Power, but other than the ring, like the two having rings that are a little similar, like they seem very different.
well, from what I'm reading, it sounds like the Ring of the Nibelung is like a musical drama. So I guess he might have taken some inspiration for. I know the Lord of the Rings, like the universe starts with someone singing
Yes, the
a
songs
song, and the
Ainur.
harmony is what creates. Yeah.
Yeah, and that completely is valid. The songs that Ainur, but the idea of songs and the power that you get within musical is something that Tolkien was very much aware of beforehand. You got to remember that Tolkien was super inspired by Norse and other pagan myths of the past when he started working on Lord of the Rings, and that's the same sources that Wagner went to when he wrote his things. By the way, hello, Mr. Pag. Welcome to the live stream. Congratulations.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you. Thank you very much.
But yes, so to finish what I was saying about the Lord of the Rings, it's fascinating to me that people look at that Tolkien's clear inspirations and then assume he ripped it off. Instead of saying, wow, this is what inspired Tolkien, I clearly should look into this myself. Maybe I can be inspired by the same sources he was. Because it's way more obvious that Tolkien was inspired by Beowulf than the Wagner's Ring cycle. Because if you look into Beowulf, it's got the epic heroes, it's got the fighting of a dragon at the end of the adventure, it's got the fighting of different, monsters, and the Orkneys are there, which are basically shadow demons. And that word Orkneys is obviously familiar if you've seen my orc videos. That gets turned into orcs because Tolkien really thought it was a cool word. And Orkneys is in fact related to Orcus, who's the Roman god of death. So it's like these undead shadow monsters. I would personally describe them more as Draugr from Skyrim. That's probably what Beowulf fought in the original myth. They just didn't have that word when they translated it at the time. So, yeah. But Tolkien didn't rip anything off. We would have found out by now. I don't think some random idiot on BuzzFeed would have figured out the real code by now.
Yeah, I feel like these people are probably a little bit poisoned by like subversion. Like they have this idea that if you faithfully like take inspiration from something, you aren't taking inspiration from it because you're stealing from it because you haven't subverted anything.
You think
I don't know.
It could be a comparison between, like saying, Star Wars was inspired by the Seven Samurai versus saying Rebel Moon stole the Seven Samurai.
Yes, definitely, because Star Wars is very much inspired by... Like, you can't look at Star Wars and find one thing. There's like 80 things that inspire Star Wars.
Right.
Just off the top of your head, you can look at Star Wars and say, well, there's a samurai film, there's a cowboy film, and yeah, they're both inspired by the same things, but they clearly divulged, and then there's Flash Gordon, and over here is a little bit of the hero's myth. Those four things are the pillars of Star Wars, just conceptually, and you can see all of them right there. Plus the Arthurian legend with the handing down of the sword and making, the power of that weapon. That's all very
Also,
much there.
Also,
Yeah.
kind of like a noble boy having like a noble lineage, but he
Yeah.
doesn't know about it type thing. Like,
Oh yeah, that's all there. Very obvious, and it's been done by other people. Now, yeah, in the Dune book series are a little bit inspired. You know, Herbert's the first guy to figure out sand, but Dune is so overrated in terms of its Star Wars inspirations. I promise you, people have like, again, it goes back to they want to take away the credit from someone like Lucas because he believes the wrong things. So they want to claim that Lucas stole from everything when he didn't. He's
I don't know if that's
inspired.
even. I definitely get that feeling for Tolkien. I don't know if they have that for Lucas, because like,
Oh, they
isn't
definitely
Lucas
do.
just like a pretty like standard like Hollywood liberal director type thing? Like, does he
J.R.R.
have any type
Tolkien would
of?
be considered left wing if you look at his
Oh, I'm not talking
ideologies
about
today.
Tolkien. Tolkien, I understand completely.
Tolkien would be a
That's not
liberal
a.
if you look at some of his policies and the way he talked about stuff. Same with Lucas, but he's old. He's not part of the current day zeitgeist. You got to remember
Okay, yeah,
that.
no, I definitely agree with. I get Lucas. I don't get Tolkien as, or I'm sorry, I get Tolkien. I don't get Lucas as
Oh,
much.
they
But
definitely would. They eat their own these days. These people can only
yeah,
destroy. They can't create anything. Also, I
I'll
want to
grant you
answer this
that.
question for James in the chat. Here's another question: are there any known artifacts in D&D that prolong life, or would be good rewards for dungeons? That is a question for your game master. And if you're game mastering yourself, that is a question you need to come up with for the player. I will tell you this right now. If you're trying to outwit a devil and for the contract, you're already lost. You need to really be careful because the devil will always win in negotiations against you. That's the problem with taking a deal with the devil. It is possible, but you need to really carefully think through stuff and find a way to basically circumvent the contract. You will not, in the renegotiations, get a better deal. The devil will take more than your soul if you ask for more back. You're going to have to find a way to get around the contract. Or, very commonly, go to hell, find the contract, and burn it.
Yeah,
But-
strong arm the devil.
Yeah, but you lose your power if that's the thing. You got to remember that. That's part of the class identity. That's why I would suggest that you know, like Pag said, you find a way to force the devil to give you something. You know, if there's an object it wants that it says, I will negate your contract for, that's golden. Now, any devil who does that needs to be incredibly desperate. But that happens. You know, devils have bosses to answer to. That if the pit fiend who, you know, checks their timesheets at the end of the week realize the devil lost one of their greatest artifacts and you can recover it for the devil, he will let your soul go because that's worth it to him. But you got to get unlucky with the devil's got to get unlucky and you got to get lucky. So, in an artifact that'll extend your life for 40 years or something. Okay, so James, I really appreciate you. You've decided that you're going to abandon all demonic influence and just go straight down the necromancer route. I'm going to become a lich now. I love it. Anything that can extend your life by 40 years or so, if people knew about it, they would be using it. You got to remember that. Again, if you ask your game master, he might have an object for it. There are plenty of objects in D&D's history that will give you double life, you know, subtract life, let you steal life. Hundreds of them if you wanted to look into the lore. However, not every setting at the table is fully in the Forgotten Realms. They might be vaguely in the Forgotten Realms, but just the fact that you have Dragonborn in your setting means that that's not the Forgotten Realms that people would have grown up with. Dragonborn were literally slammed into the setting because they sold really well in 4th edition. So you got to remember there's been a lot of shakeups, a lot of rewrites. That's why Mr. Rex has his entire series of what they didn't tell you about in the Monster Manual, because they just left out so much lore from there. So if you're looking for a specific artifact, you're SOL. You need to ask your game master for that. I can't give you oh yeah, here's Sauron's, you know, towel. You go get that and you're good. It's just in this cave. No. That's not how D&D works. So, yes. All right. Did anybody here have any questions about any things they wanted to cover with world building and game design issues that they had? We've already helped James a few times, and I've taken a couple of the pre-written ones I had.
I have no problems whatsoever. I am the perfect DM. I've never had any issues.
This is true.
Is there
Hmm?
a lot of a lot of the times with world building, it's you can want to try to take real world inspiration. How much would you suggest to take from, say, real historical cultures? How much should you? Is
I
there a
think
good
that-
balance between your own creation and real creations?
There's two answers to this question. The first answer is if you're publishing it, you need to be very careful. One of the funniest lawsuits I've ever read is Bionicles got sued by the Maori nation of New Zealand in New Zealand because all of their names were literally just Maori words. They got sued for cultural
Really?
appropriation. It's a very funny lawsuit,
Wow.
but it's kind of crappy because Bionicle was kind of the first time anybody was introduced to Maori language. Now it's popular and people know what's going on there and you can talk about it. But it's really funny. The first time anybody had any sort of inkling about it, they immediately sued over it. But knowing that, it's because they kind of did a lazy adaptation, to be honest. You could very easily make a better adaptation. So if you're publishing it, you need to be way more careful. But for private stuff, you can be very easily inspired by cultures. In fact, I suggest that you mix 2 or 3 different cultures together to get a much more interesting flavor for your culture. This, of course,
I was gonna say,
go ahead.
with the confidence of someone who has barely played D&D and has never DM'd, I think it's a really good idea because there's like so many, especially if you're pulling from like history, like ancient historical countries, or even countries that people just generally don't care about. Like you could, there's a lot of interesting history that you can pull from, or cultures that you can pull from, and it'll seem new and interesting because I mean, most people don't care about like what the Bulgarian Empire or whoever was doing and like the culture that they had, and you could probably pull some interesting practices from them, or something, just as an example.
Definitely. And on that specifically, if you want to make sure that you, again, this is from, as a game designer, if you want to make sure that you're adapting the game in your own settings well, you're going to naturally be respectful about it. I don't see a whole lot of people being cruel when they adapt cultures. Now, it can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. But just, your players. If they would get upset with you adapting cultures for your game, don't adapt those certain cultures. Maybe they have a certain sensitivity. I know that there was a player that I used to play with who was Cuban. And for him, he would get very upset whenever there was Soviet-like stuff in the settings. And he had because one of his family members was taken to Russia and executed. I don't want to get into details past that. So obviously any Russian stuff would upset him. So I just neglected to have Russian-related things in the setting. There was no real vodka. There was no comrades and stuff like that. And it was okay. We met, but he let me know that beforehand and told me, hey, man, I know that you like different cultures, but this, is a sore spot for me. Please don't. So we just didn't do that, which is fine. Make sure you know your players before you do that. This is not an excuse for you to point at me and say, well, this guy said it was okay. How dare you get mad at me that I had all the all the tribal people with really large lips and stuff? Like, don't do that. Respectfully adapt things. Well, no, I'm serious. Like, just respectfully adapt stuff.
I know you're serious. But the example is just.
I'm gonna let a little bit behind the scenes baseball. That when I did that video on the Kolar Kong, when I talked about the Isle of the Ape, that book, the way it describes the tribesmen, it is fascinating because it was written from I'm trying to be racially positive from like the 80s. So some of the terminology is let's just say dated.
Oh no.
And it's pretty funny.
Oh my goodness.
But like,
are we talking dated like we're no longer allowed to use the word savages because it's racist, or native, or like dated like he dropped N-bombs? Like what are we talking?
The word ebenoid was used to describe them.
Oh no.
I haven't even heard that one. That's
I know, right?
the deep lore of racism right there.
But it's just it's fascinating.
Look, Peg, you gotta cycle through them. They get too.
I guess so. Yeah, I
But just-
need to brush up on my my
But
slurs.
just you hear that word, it's just like that's one of those
Oh,
words that
no.
you hear. You're like, if it's not a slur yet, that's gonna be a slur when people figure it out. That feels it's got slur
If
energy.
you say it,
Yeah.
someone will think it's a slur, regardless of
Yeah.
if it is or isn't.
So just don't do stuff like that when you're adapting a culture. That's okay. It just if you don't do stuff like that, you're trying to say I want to be respectful and I want to respect this culture and enjoy it. You'll be fine. It's okay if you have a place that's basically fantasy Japan and they've got samurais. I'm sure some people will get mad at that, but you'll be fine. Now, if you want it to be super interesting, that's when you mix and meld cultures. One of the most fascinating cultures that I like to point to in fantasy to talk about stuff is the Red Guards from the Elder Scrolls. On the surface, they're very lame. You look at them, you're like, they're just fantasy, black people. Who cares? Here's the thing. No, I'm serious. Here's the thing. If you look at their culture and like really start to boil down and figure out what's going on here, their names are Persian and Swahili. Their cultural, like the way their stuff is designed, is Middle Eastern. All of their weapons, except except for the scimitars, in their lore, their government system is all Japanese.
Interesting.
They have a feudal Japanese society. If you listen to the way they structure things and the way they talk about it and how they actually they basically had Musashi Miyamoto is their founding hero. He goes by another name. I think his name is Old Ebonarm. And instead of the Book of 5 Rings, he's got the Book of 10 Rings in the game. Got the Book of 5 Stances. Go look at Redguard's weapon culture, and it's just Japanese samurai culture and Bushido given to a group of, Middle Eastern dressing African people. It's a really interesting culture automatically because you took the ideas of, I want to have a weapons culture. Yeah, not Alfarius is right. They're described as Moorish samurai. I think that's a really cool concept, and it gives you automatically a brand new culture. You've taken what would be a traditionally Persian-style culture that's kind of lame in nature, that you expect, and now you added samurai there. Well, that's a really cool adjustment. What else could you do? You could very easily say, hey, I want to have these dwarves basically be like the Scottish people, because that's the common thing everybody does. But what if instead of just being purely like just a Scottish ripoff, I gave them a focus on something else? Like, what if I put them in the desert? What's another culture I can mix with Scottish that would be really cool that lives out in a desert environment? Imagine a Scottish Arabic culture where instead of just, being like in the highlands all the time, they're in caravans all together. They deal with water. They're really good at mercantile skills. They're much into spreading their religion, like the Arabs did with Islam. That already is a completely unique dwarven culture. And all you did was keep 90% of the Scottish dwarves that we have and just add the mercantile stuff that you get in the way that trade routes happen from the Arabic cultures. That's super cool right there. And on the top of that, if you want to get real crazy, you add a third culture in, and that's when it just does. It's totally unique at that point. You've made your own stuff.
Yep.
That's a good point, Alafaris. I think dwarves work pretty well as more Greek-inspired than Norse. I'm going to let you on a little inside baseball. In my sitting, my dwarves are German. And the reason is, to me, dwarves need to be hyper-focused on creating, like, single objects. And I cannot think of a group of people who, like, have, like, hyper-specific obsessions besides the Germans. The Germans really want something, they will make that thing work. They will have the craziest, most over-engineered vehicles. They have the most over-engineered rockets. Everything that they make is like perfectly hyperly over-engineered. And that's what I wanted to reflect in my setting, because the dwarfs in my game mechanically, they get a bonus of like a +3, which is a 15% bonus essentially, to one skill. Any skill that they want to do, they are automatically perfectly like at that. So if a dwarf says, I want to be the best at sneaking in the world, that hyper focus that they put towards that makes them the best stealth in the world. Obviously other factors reflect it, but just they automatically have that one focus.
There's probably an unintentional benefit.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably an unintentional benefit in that to outsiders the German language can often sound very aggressive, which does sound like it could fit a dwarven culture where outsiders just feel very much more out of place and almost attacked, I guess, in that they just feel aggressively outside of it.
Yes, and that's the other points. And then you also look at the way that they celebrate with alcohol, the beer fest, and all the pretzels. I feel like it fits them very well. On top of the fact that I wanted to add some other cultural flavors into it, and I took American bar culture and added that in there. American bar culture is interesting because we have a strange tradition here that I think the English do too, where they put salted nuts on the counter. The reason is you'll eat these free peanuts, and it'll make you thirsty, so you want to get more beer. Great idea.
Right.
So I took that and said, well, what if... Huh?
Is that why they do that?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't think about it, but
Oh,
like,
that's
that
100%
makes
why they
sense.
do it. It's
Yeah.
been well
Like,
known.
it makes perfect sense. Like I'm not doubting it. Like
Those
that does
diabolical
make perfect
fuckers.
sense.
Right?
You're
So-
telling me at the bar wants me to drink more. That's crazy.
Exactly.
That's wild. How could that be?
So I took that and said, well, what if instead of it being like, just like you said, like a reason to drink more, what if dwarves just really enjoyed nuts? And I thought, I could see dwarves be like, they have contests where they try to crack peanuts and they crack walnuts in their arms and stuff. And that feels
that's
very
fun.
dwarven. So when you're
Yeah.
on a marching trip with dwarves, they often, instead of having trail mix, will just have piles of nuts that are still in the shells, and they just take turns trying to crack them and, get them going. I think that, to me, is very fun, and I think fits their whole aesthetic well.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So yeah, now I want to scroll back a little bit and go back to some of the stuff in chat. James had a good question. How do you do themes in a D&D story, or do you not need one? I think that question is good, but I think that the phrasing is a bit off. I wouldn't call it a D&D story. I think that you need to... Are you the game master, or are you the player when you're trying to do this? The game master naturally should include some themes because it's a story they're trying to tell. And the world is, even if they say, I've got no ideas with, what's going on here, I'm just plopping people down. Your setting says a lot just because of the way it's designed. You can look at Skyrim and understand that it's very, very anti-war, and it's very much on the whole collapse of societies that occur from subversion and repressing of religion, solely from the amount of bandit camps that are in random castles. Just because the world is a fun game space to go play in, you can see, wow, they've clearly had some sort of demographic and societal collapse, which is partially related to the Great War 30 years ago, that led to banditry, that's led to starvation. Everybody complains about how hard life is in Skyrim. That's all there.
There's
as a
the
gameplay
entire
research.
Reach faction.
Yeah, the entire Reach who constantly upset stuff. You're saying things about the world and the settings just because you set up a game space. So having that theme be there is relevant, and you should play into that and be aware of that when you're designing things. This doesn't mean, though, that you need to say, I'm going to have a story about loss and motherhood, and I need to force this into the game. No, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. You don't have to have themes and force it into your setting. But if you're designing your setting, themes will come about naturally, and being aware of them would be important.
Yeah, it's good to
Do you
bake that
think-
stuff into the setting from the outset. That's the trick. And bake it into, also, if you're planning on having some central event that the party is the key figures in, you set up that central event with this, because you can't control what the parties are doing. At best, it's like herding cats. At best. So you
To
kind of
that
just
idea.
have to
Like,
put it in
a
in the bake.
famous story of the one of the few D&D games I had was where my buddy had this whole thing planned. He's like, "Oh, hey, there's a camp." And then we rolled for perception or something, and it's nothing appears to be out of ordinary. And I think we tried to talk them, and then very quickly we're just like, well, nothing here, and we just moved on. And apparently there was a big quest he had planned there, and we just ruined literally everything.
That's a
Oh,
pro tip
no.
right there. Never, ever, ever make your players roll for something that you need to give them. They just find it. And if they do accidentally call for a roll, doesn't matter the roll. Whoever got the highest, you find it then. It's okay to be like, oh shit, I shouldn't have had your roll for that. And just say,
Slap them
here.
in the face with it.
Yeah, just give it to them. The only time they should roll is if there's a chance for failure, or if they can get additional information. Maybe they learn that the big bad guy uses flaming swords if they rolled high enough. Guess what? They don't get to know that. Sucks for them. They get to be surprised when they walk in the door and he's got flaming katanas. But knowing that this bad guy is over there, they need to go fight him, they should just find that info. Otherwise, you're going to have situations like this where nothing good happens. You only get, the terrible situations.
Yeah, you might even need to make your follow your players around with the big event if they're really oblivious, and sometimes they will be really oblivious. You just have to be like, oh yeah, this town is also killed by hundreds of undead, and they might say, fuck this town too. They get to the next one, it's also killed. You're just gonna keep finding towns with undead until you decide to deal with it.
It's like the famous D&D post. We're up to session 6 of my first D&D game. It's pretty cool. We've been going around town helping people, but it seems like no matter where we walk, we keep noticing the ominous castle on the hill outside of town.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Tio, you had a thing you wanted to ask? Oh, he's
apparently
muted himself. It's okay. Yeah, he must be talking to someone else. So, on that same point, it's really fascinating that when you're trying to design your world to make sure you have the themes and stuff, but as a player, you really can't put themes like that into the game. It's in the Game Master side a lot of the themes come out. If you wanted to do that, you should talk to...
you cut out, I think.
I'm sorry. I was trying to say, as a player, you should talk to your Game Master if you want to include these themes. If you want to include ideas and things like that, talk to the Game Master. Don't do things without the Game Master. I promise you, almost every Game Master will love it when you come to them and say, hey man, I really want to add this to the game. I'm enjoying this. I want to do this. They love it.
Yeah, the problem with themes is that a lot of the times...
That's how Farius knows.
No, dude, he literally unmuted. That might have actually summoned him. I guess it did. Tio, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Apologies.
Oh my god, it literally summoned him. That's great.
We missed you.
Farius threatened to send you a lost meme.
What did you want to say, Tio?
What was it? Do you think there's any advantage to trying to use a theme to come up with the idea for a quest line you want to give your characters? Like if you end up wanting to do you think you decide you want to do a story based around revenge, the players might not end up getting the conclusion that would best fit your theme, but do you think that having a theme in mind could help you design a quest line?
Definitely. I think that when you, as a game master, designing stuff, having themes and storytelling beats in mind to help set up stories is great. But the problem is you got to deal with the players. It's a collaborative storytelling, that's going on here. The players are they're like players are like Schrodinger's cat. They're both so smart, they will guess your entire plot the minute the first gnome says hi to them. They'll figure out the conspiracy theory, how he's actually an ancient lich who's come back from hell to kill them all, and he's got to use the dragon stones to summon everything. And then they will look at an unlocked door and spend 2 hours trying to figure out how to open it. It is fascinating, the mind of a player.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only that, but also just the unpredictability of it. Like, you might want to go down one route, but if the player's not going down it, or if the players just don't want to go down that route, like your entire storyline could just be screwed. And like if you're trying or even like not even that the storyline is screwed, but like the theme that you're going for is screwed because instead of helping the woman get over her revenge, she just becomes, you make her happy and murder a hobo or something, or you just kill her or something, something.
Yeah, instead of helping the woman avenge her husband from the orcs, you kill her and sell her scalp to the orcs.
Exactly. There's ways for the players to just subvert your entire plan and the themes of that plan fairly easily. So
honestly, I would argue that that's not necessarily subverting the theme, because it was her path, her seeking revenge, that led to her destruction.
If you scalp her, then that completely ruins the theme of either of that, like Kid said, because then you just don't know what that was going to lead her down, considering that you, like he said, just killed her and scalped her.
He's got a point. Maybe they offered you $5 more.
Reggie got a point with that one. He's a real one with that one. They're paying more. It's just business.
I was just a businessman. I do want to say, not all Farius. I had Texas Roadhouse the other day, so I know the floor peanut thing is real.
Dude, Texas Roadhouse is good. I haven't been there in so long, but yeah, the peanuts are it's crazy.
But I also want to say, James, you're wrong. The Dragonborn should not unify the Stormcloaks and the Imperials against the Thalmor. The Stormcloaks are literally a CIA operation set up by the Thalmor. It's a false flag against the Empire. This is not even like a... You think I'm joking? No, go to the Thalmor embassy
I'm
and
laughing
read the
'cause
books.
I assume that you're... Look, I'm not too big into Skyrim. I played I played a little bit of which one is it called? Or Skyrim oh yeah, it's Elder Scrolls Skyrim. So I played a little bit of Skyrim. I wasn't too into it, but like when you say stuff, I take it as gospel, man. I believe you. If you're saying that there's CA, it's just funny the way you're describing it as a false flag, you know.
It really is, though.
Yeah, there was a dossier, right?
Yes. They literally have a CA.
Really?
So the premise, if
Oh
you don't
my
know, is
goodness.
that the Empire, who's good and unified everything, they had to ban the worship of basically Jesus because they lost the war to the elves who hated Jesus. That's the quick version of it. The Nords loved Jesus so much that they started a rebellion against it. Okay. Now, the Nords, their entire rebellion is being funded by the elves who hate Jesus because their goal is to start a revolution to cause this nation to split off, to make the Empire weaker, and then the elves will just come in later and kill both weak nations.
That's funny.
They've even
Yeah, quote,
they've got notes like
Ulfric-
funding these people, let these people go. They do things specifically to help the rebellion and prolong it. It's all written there, and it's fascinating. It's just like, dude, it's very clear who you're supposed to side with in that situation.
Yeah, that's funny.
Not Alfarius, I'm going to ignore that comment because I love you too much, but he's definitely a Thalmor plant.
Yeah, it's fairly explicit in the game. Ulfric came to our attention when he was
Look.
taken as a prisoner of war. He was allowed to escape. We've given he has proven his worth as an asset, and contact was established. He's a dormant thing now, but yeah. Long story short, always assume the racists are controlled by the feds.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, Alfarius, I'm gonna have to say, Fed.
Fed. All right.
That is all.
So, they do consider him an asset, but he's still working for them. So does anybody else in chat have any questions or Game Master tips that they need help with? Any quest designs, or even as a player, any things you want us to help give suggestions with? Feel free to let us know. I have, like I said, other things that I've written down from other people. If you don't have anything, we can go into those, but obviously I would like to answer those who are here live with us first. You guys get precedent, because I love you all.
Aw.
While
Don't
they
get too close to him. He'll give you a big old kiss on the lips. You
Exactly.
don't want that.
So while chat
think it would
thinks
be-
go ahead.
Do you think it would be advantageous to go over an example of, like in popular media, just world building gone horribly wrong, as a way to discuss how not to?
Man, there's a lot of that. It almost
Yeah,
all
there's
boils
a
down.
lot of that
Examples,
these
I feel
It
like
days.
we
almost
wanna,
all
like,
boils down to keep your
nail it
fetishes out of the
down.
game unless you can write well.
I mean, Wonder Woman was created in large part because of the author's fetishes, but there's a lot of ways you can go about making
Yeah,
such a
but
thing.
like, was Wonder
good.
Woman like? How popular is Wonder Woman of like, and especially during that era? Like, even if it was caused by fetishes, I don't think Wonder Woman, like, maybe she's top 5, maybe, but I don't know.
Is
I feel
good
like Wonder
in
Woman
team-ups. Her solo
Yeah,
stuff never does well. But
yeah,
she's
like,
fantastic
she's
when other
popular
people
in
write her.
team-ups. Yeah, she's popular in team-ups, but like, I mean, like as a solo series, like, because yeah, just mainly as a solo series. Like, I feel like she's like maybe not even in the top 5 or top 10, but like when she's in a team-up, I feel like she's fairly popular.
I
Yeah.
think she's a good
Yeah,
character to keep around, but just her early stuff is weird.
Yeah,
Not
you
even-
can see a lot
don't
of
even
the.
need to go with early stuff. I feel like in general, and maybe someone's gonna,
No, the early
come in
stuff
and
was
post-
100% legitimately. The guy wrote it because he wanted to have female
Well,
BDSM sex stuff going on.
let me be clear. I'm not saying that wasn't happening and that wasn't weird and bad. I'm saying I'm not sure if it ever got better, even when they lost the female BDSM stuff.
Okay, Ulfric. So James has another 2 questions here. Is it right to have your campaign start in the middle of a war? Like, is there any good way to run that? Okay, so I think right is the wrong word there. There is no right and wrong choices here. It's all about
It's about execution.
Yes, it's all about execution. So you could totally have your game start in the middle of a war. I think that's a fantastic thing to do. And there's plenty of good ways to run that. It just boils down to you have to figure out what are the players doing. Is the war just an outlying thing that is the war an outlying thing that just happens so that the players experience? Like, is it just set dressing so they're constantly going through town and it's famine? Or is it one of those things where it's like, hey, the players are going to have to participate in it and you're going to solve the problems of this war? That's very different things. So, anybody in the panel have any thoughts on that?
I think in media res is one of the best ways to like immediately gain interest in a story. Like if you also, it's a good way to throw players together. If you're like, you guys are part of a special operations group, assuming that they're not level 1 fuckboys. You guys are a special operations group. You need to go in and take this thing from the enemy capital. Well, that's instantly a dungeon, a reason for the players to be together, like a reason for them to like fight a certain thing and have a certain enemy, and all that combined right on your first session. So like that's starting them in the middle of a war, I think is excellent. The only problem is you have to kind of get them into the lore a little bit. But if your players are willing to read like 2 paragraphs, you can just write up like 2-3 paragraphs for them and say, this is who these guys are, this is who you guys are, this is why you're doing what you're doing. Boom, they're in. And most players, they're willing to read 2 or 3 paragraphs before the start of the game. In fact, most players are willing to read quite a bit before the start of the game.
Well, not only
Especially
that,
if you tell them it's going to affect their characters.
Yes.
True. Not only that, but you could also do something where, like, instead of having it be like, oh, you're doing a secret, you could have it so that maybe your group is, if you want, probably would be better for like a low level thing, but like your scavengers after a battle, and you're like you want your looters after a battle, so you go like to a field and maybe there's like a few weak enemies who are like almost dead from the battle, or they're like you have to face the cleanup crew who's picking through the bodies that remain, or for
Sure,
something.
Witcher 3 has an opening like that.
I was gonna say I like was feeling I feel like something like this happened in Witcher 3, and I wanted to reference it, but I haven't played Witcher 3 in a while, so I didn't want to comment on specifically Witcher 3 because I was like, this is oddly specific that I'm thinking Witcher 3, but I do not for the life of me remember the beginning of Witcher 3 to like confidently say that it's Witcher 3 that I'm thinking of.
I feel like a lot of media starts things in the middle of a war because it's a great way to grab attention, and I mean, there's so many opportunities available to you. You just have to be creative enough to grab them by the throat.
Another thing I was going to say is that instead of being a secret operative, you just be like a mercenary group, or like maybe you do the same spy. They send you on like a spy mission to like gather intel because, you're not officially or known to be in cahoots with the one government, which also gives the players, the interesting choice of, do we want to betray them if we get offered more money by the other side? Like stuff like that might be interesting.
Various is right that I think Witcher 2 also technically has a flashback that starts you in a siege. That's also okay. Siege is in the middle of a war. Another thing is you like one of my favorite things that I've done as a start, the players all make their characters, and I tell them, okay, you're on a caravan going from, basically Venice to Egypt. And along the way, it turns out Albania and Greece started a war, and the Greeks just sink your ship. So now you've washed ashore at Albania in the middle of the war. Figure it out. And that was fun, that small campaign, when we were in that, because they were immediately thrust into the war. The war is now 100% their problem. They're stuck now in the situation where it's like, hey, we've got to deal with the fact that, our boat sank and now we have to work together. Anything that can slam the players together is a really good thing to help.
Yeah, slam them together.
And for you, James, you're pretty good with lore stuff. You're nervous because your D&D group is falling apart. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I think most people should I think everybody should play D&D, but it's not for everybody. You should definitely give it a try because there's some people who you don't think would like D&D who would really get into it. And as long as you've got, 2 or 3 other players who are not game masters, you should be pretty much okay. You'll be fine if your group, you don't need to have the perfect 4 players or the 9 players or whatever your group has. You'll be fine just starting it. So I think that focusing on the group cohesion is a bad thing. The other thing to remember is your game master might suck, and he's driving away potential players. If players have a bad time with their first game, they're not going to give it a second shot. So if you're worried about that and you've got issues with the group, that could be another thing. Or you could have a terrible player. Terrible players are just as bad as terrible game masters at driving away group cohesion.
You have to kind of be willing to tell people to fuck off sometimes.
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
Yeah. Even I've had to kick out friends from my table. It sucks and it causes a fight, but it's like, look, dude, just the way you're playing is not the way we want to play. I'm sorry. It's we're still friends, but it doesn't vibe. It is one of the worst.
It's like how sometimes friends don't make the best roommates.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of trust and a lot of you as a person goes into your characters and your settings when you're designing them. So you kind of need to be, when you're opening yourself up like that, they need to react in a way that's beneficial for not just you, but for the whole group. And it sucks, but just sometimes you got to rip the bandage off. You got to cut out the cancer before it can spread. The last thing you want to have is one problem player scare away 3 good players, and now you're stuck with the problem player.
And that will happen.
Definitely will happen. It's happened in way too many games that I've been in, and it took me too long to learn that lesson before I really boiled down to it and realized, wow, here's what we got to do.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta buck up.
Yeah, but on a positive note, I think you'll be fine, James. I've seen some of the things you've posted. You'll be good.
Yeah, you'll be all right, kiddo.
Stop trying to start cults all over the place. It's weird.
There's other games for that. Don't you worry.
Go play Vampire the Masquerade. They love it when you have cults in that game. Being a vampire.
Play through more of that game. That game's really fun.
Well, it's a tabletop game too. Don't forget.
Oh, I did forget about that.
Yeah. It's like this is gonna piss so many people off. Vampire the Masquerade is one of the 4 tabletop games that actually matter. And I'm sorry, but it really is. It's Warhammer, D&D, Cthulhu, and Vampire. The rest of them are fun, and I love the other games. Don't get me wrong, but they basically started their systems or popularized them to the point where every other system is based on that. I get Fantasy Flight has their things, but I hate Fantasy Flight game systems. I'm sorry. Okay, just so you guys who don't know, you have to buy special dice to play their game, which automatically makes me hate you. And what's worse is they're D6s. So you have to buy their special D6s.
So what's special about their D6s?
So instead of being numbered 1 through instead of being numbered 1 through 6, it'll be numbered blank, blank, 1 positive, 1 negative, 2 positive, 2 negative.
Oh wow!
And then if you get if you get the dice that are positive dice, they have the 2 negative taken off and replaced with another 1 positive. And if you get the negative dice, the other way. You need 6 different types of dice to play the game that are all different colors, and all are only sold in 4-packs, so you can never build up a bulk of them. And you need 20 dice every time you roll. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, that sounds like a pain.
It's just to sell dice.
I'm not a huge fan. Yeah, it's just to sell extra stuff. I'm not a huge fan of boxcar systems, but I can totally appreciate the design philosophy of just we just use D6s. That's what we use. They're cheap. You can get them. We just use D6s. That's totally fair.
Oh, yeah. James, wait, James, you gotta go watch my Play Other Games video, James. That'll teach you a whole bunch of other RPGs that are out there. I hit like the bare minimum basic stuffs in that video. There's some crazy. I'll show you Fatal one day, and that'll give you nightmares.
No, he's too young for Fatal.
He probably is, actually. I think Tio is still too young for Fatal. I think I'm too young for Fatal.
I've
Yeah.
never heard of Fatal, so
I will
I'm gonna
talk
say
to you about it
that's
off
perfect.
stream. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's like the Book of Erotic Fantasy was a game.
What?
worse than
Okay,
that.
I Google it and I immediately regret it, and I choose to focus on the picture of way too many dice instead.
Yeah, you're better off.
I'm going to tell you right now, Fatal is is objectively the most horrible thing. You cannot talk about it without violating TOS. So we're going to move on. Part of the Masquerade is, to me, in my mind, the second or third most important RPG because it was the first time D&D almost was dethroned by a not D&D game. Vampire came out in the 90s and completely changed everything about fantasy. When Vampire dropped in the 90s, it really
James, do
revolutionized.
not look up Fatal. I don't know what it is, but these guys are worried.
Don't
and
do
that
it.
doesn't-
Don't do that, James.
sounds
Don't do
bad.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Vampire the Masquerade. It's kind of a massive step away from wargaming, which is where tabletop started. Tabletop kind of started as just like a kill things, get EXP, get loot, get better at killing things. Vampire the Masquerade is a massive step away from that because it's specifically developed around socializing. Like,
Oh,
that's
kids.
the whole
Hang on a second.
focus
I
of the game.
think the stream went down, guys. Hang on a sec.
Oh,
Wanna do
jeez.
it?
Well, butter my nuts.
All right. I just got a notification. YouTube says that they're having a problem.
I mean, Vampire.
Yeah.
I've only played the video game.
I
That game
think
is
we're
a lot of
back.
fun. Pretty impressive.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. YouTube died for a second there.
Nice.
If somebody could post in chat and let us know if you can hear us again, that'd be great. Otherwise, I guess we'll just resume talking about Vampire and its importance.
Yeah,
Pad,
I
would you
just tried
please-
to watch the stream. I could hear it. That was a lot, but yeah, I think we're back on.
Okay, Pag, would you please go back and explain to the viewers what's going on
Yeah.
with a vampire?
James,
So when they-
what part did you not understand about do not look up the game? I'm just curious. I'm just curious
He
what
doesn't-
part was confusing about
He's a
that.
sensitive young man. He's not gonna listen to what you say.
Oh, kids, remember how you
Hey.
said you think I'm too young for Fatal?
Yeah.
I'm as old as Fatal.
I know you are, but like I said, I'm too young for that game. I don't like that game's existence. I'm not going to tell people it can't exist, of course. I'm not going to be a Bambi about cancelizations.
Oh no, I'm gonna say it. Fatal should not exist.
Yeah, probably.
Hey, what's
James,
wrong
I
with
don't wanna
From Another
know.
Time
Look,
and Other
I'm
Lands?
gonna-
There's no.
Look, you guys can all be like, "Oh, Fatal, he said not to look at it. Let me look at it." I'm gonna choose to live in ignorance. I'm happy not knowing what Fatal is.
Yeah, you're
I'm
better
gonna
off.
live
All
with
right, so let's focus on Vampire, though. Let's have fun again. Let's all have happy
that.
times.
Yay!
So,
Anyway, yeah,
Vampire
so
is super
Vampire-
important. Go ahead.
They built the whole game around socialization to the detriment of the combat system. Like it is so focused on socialization that I don't know. It's legitimately not like pretty much any other war game that had come before it. I actually like kind of hate the combat system in Vampires. I think it's legitimately like non-functional unless
I
you
agree.
modify. A lot of the vampires have abilities that are just straight up instant kills if you can't resist them. Which is just irritating, just extremely irritating.
So nice. That's so
Yeah.
nice.
It's
Um,
also irritating because like humans can't do anything. You are so much more powerful than them. It's not even worth statting them, except for when they're hunters. Then for some reason they have a chance to do some stupid BS that can one kill you.
yeah.
That's awesome.
It's just
Yeah, it's an oddly designed game. But for what they designed it for the socialization, it's pretty good, I understand.
and that's what really got people changed. You will see one day I'll do an RPG history video. And if you get stuff like Playing at the World, which by the way, that book is back in print. It's a fantastic history of the game. If you should pick it up. I'm probably going to pick it up soon myself. Vampire changed the way people talked about RPGs. It completely revolutionized them, and like Pag said, you now want to talk to people. It got so big that because it fought second edition, that when third edition came around, third edition was entirely a response to Vampire, and I still remember some of the ad campaigns when it was coming out that was like back to the dungeon. Cut the talking crap. Like that's the ad campaigns that they ran were like, we're gonna go back to just killing everything. Because Vampire was so dominant, and the idea that you just talk to everybody and to solve your problems became so ubiquitous in the hobby that it became kind of strange. It took over the wargaming side. Y'all hearing me okay still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I just don't have anything to add.
Yeah.
I got another red flag on the thing that's just said internet, and I'm like, oh, what's going on here?
Look, the only thing I know about Vampire the Masquerade is the video game that I've played like maybe a quarter of at best.
And the video game
Really
is the
good
video
game
game-
in that.
based on the same IP, yes.
Okay.
I understand that considering it's lifting the exact same title. Usually you don't risk naming the same thing. Like, even if it's a different medium, you usually don't risk naming an IP the exact same thing. So
Okay, so Vampire, it would take a long time to explain Vampire, James. You're probably better off, instead of us spending like 30 minutes here in the stream doing that, messaging Pag privately or asking Pag in his server about it. He can give you a better rundown of it. That way you don't have to waste time here.
Yeah, I've got like 3,000 hours in that fucking game.
Yeah, it's
nice.
that game is one of the things that inspired his game that he's designing.
Yeah, I literally built my game as a mod for Vampire the Masquerade at the very start. It's grown way beyond that, but yeah.
That comes into a topic though. How does the mechanics of different game systems can they impact your world building? Do they impact it
Oh,
to a big
definitely.
degree? Or
Tio, that's a very interesting topic. I need to say my joke first before that becomes hopefully irrelevant by this interesting topic. So, Pag, basically what you're saying is your game is the 50 Shades of Grey to Vampire the Masquerade's.
As a matter of
Twilight.
fact, yes, that's
Okay.
literally
I just
exactly
wanted- I
how to
wanted to
describe
make
it.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make
That explains all the butt stuff.
oh no.
Yes, and that's why chocolate starfish are in fact an official species in game.
That explains the
no.
Boral's reproduction cycle.
Oh my goodness! Don't let Pops know. He's gonna be playing your game too much if you tell him about it now.
All right. So to answer Tio's question, though, yes. In fact, I would argue that that D&D's mechanics have held back their lore for decades. It's very clear that the mechanic of the spell slot is not something D&D wants anymore. The way that they write their lore is antithetical to spell slots in the modern stuff. Older D&D stuff understood spell slots. They had it down right. You go back and read a Dritz book, and it's completely understandable how spells work. A lot of the modern stuff is completely insane with how they're trying to basically have spells be cast without spell slots. This is one of the reasons a lot of the monster design in 5th edition feels so weird. Randomly, some people get spell slots and some don't.
Oh, yeah.
You cut out, bud.
I heard there was no. He did that on purpose. There was some background noise before.
Talk for 5
Oh, I
seconds.
Like
okay.
dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, and to expand on that, so as far as the lore goes for D&D and how like the game feels, so you're very heroic in D&D. You're the big damn heroes who kick down the door, go into the dungeon, and your barbarian can eat a bazillion hits, he can fall from orbit without dying, yada yada yada. And all that together kind of goes towards how heroic you feel. In World of Darkness, as a regular human, if you encounter a supernatural thing, it'll kill you. And that's it. Like, you just die. Like, a vampire can just tell you to kill yourself, and you do. And that's it.
Sorry
Oh.
about
You
that,
should
guys.
kill yourself now.
My dad's
Yeah,
washing
exactly.
the dogs, and the wet dog just ran into my room. So I had to
Mhm.
Yeah,
guide him
I
politely
heard
back
some
out.
dog noises. I'm like, one of the dogs doing something. I don't
Yeah,
know what.
dad's washing them. One of the dogs dug a hole and decided to roll the dirt today. Bless his heart.
Oh, yeah.
However, he needs to be rinsed off, and he decided, I'm going to jump out of the water and go to John's room. So we dealt with that. It's all good now. But yes, I heard some of this discussion. Absolutely. And I think Alfarius has a fantastic point. If low-level clerics are in your setting, that completely changes how magic and how healing works. There should never be an injured person ever if an abundance of people can just cast healing spell. That just shouldn't be a thing. There shouldn't be infected wounds. There shouldn't be issues with health. Broken bones should be reset. It's weird how D&D, modern stuff especially, has decided that these horrible ailments like diseases can just exist, but there's clerics everywhere.
I mean, the classic example I think of is some meme. I probably have on my phone if I can find it, but it's some person being like, "Yeah, I'm a disabled person who's able to fight," and then like the cleric just heals them and they're able to use their legs immediately.
Yeah.
Like
That's
like
why the
that
whole
type of
combat
stuff
wheelchair
will-
thing was so stupid. Not because you need to be mean to people in a wheelchair. No, but in the setting that they specifically wrote, it's a very easy spell to cure people like that. Why would they ever develop the technology for wheelchairs? Never mind the fact that, these people need to suffer. They just wouldn't develop the technology of a wheelchair because they don't need it. They could just heal stuff. That's why some of the best written fantasy stuff going on, it's like people have I think Brandon Sanderson has this, because nobody has had to deal with mundane healing. They just don't do it. So they have the healing technology of the Crimean War, where it's I guess we got to cut it off if magic's not around. It's awesome, but it's terrible at the same time.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very clear to me that the designers don't understand their setting. And never mind the fact that spell slots are really cool as a conceit for your world. They just never make them cool anymore. Because spell slots used to be from Jack Vance back when he, that's why it's called Vancian Magic in Dying Earth. I've told this before, but I don't think I've told it on live streams. The way magic
I was gonna say you explained it to me in live. I don't think it was on a live stream, but
I don't think it was, but just
was
the
very
way it works
interesting.
it's great. So Vancian magic works. You open your mind to the astral and to hell, and you look for demons throughout there. And when you find a demon, you grab him and you put him in your head. And then when you speak his name, he will come out. So you'll literally find a guy named Fireball, grab him, put him in your head, and when you're ready to cast a spell, you go, Fireball, and he shows up, explodes, and gets to go back to where he lives. That's so cool. That's the coolest way spell slots ever exist. But they just don't have that. It's we put it in a scroll and you can learn. Why would you give that up? That's the coolest way you can describe things ever. Why don't
especially
why don't evil clerics or warlocks have that as a flavor text? Yeah, warlocks, you can't learn spells from reading books. Instead, your patron gives you a bunch of small demons to stick in your brain that you can cast with. It's right there. It's free real estate.
Yeah. I mean, especially I just think about the conversation I had when you first told me about it. I don't remember if you said it or I said you probably said it. But you mentioned what happens if that person dies? They just becomes basically a time bomb where if they die it's a small bomb going. I say small bomb. It could be a very big bomb with all the demon guys all escaping at once, shooting off all their powers. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with that.
And then just because you have that as a conceit in your setting, that tells you a lot about the world. That means that you have to be evil to cast spells, unless there's another way to do it. Could you put angels in your head that have the same name? Is that how clerics work? Could you just put vaguely magical spirits in your head? Because D&D has loss of neutrality and just general magic. That's a really interesting thing to talk about your world. It all comes from game design. I'm going to tell you right now, one of the things from my own personal world, the way I designed it, I hate the way Magic works. I really like a mana system. I don't want to get into the details yet, but basically I have a system where you can power up spells, and if you power up too much or you fail your roll to power it up, you take damage. That's cool. But I wanted to have a flavor for that because it kind of doesn't feel right that you will just take damage. It's weird. Like, can I just use my blood to cast spells then? So what I did is I said every time that you cast spells, it uses a little bit of your soul, a little bit of your soul energy. Normally, when you get your normal mana regeneration throughout the day, that's just a general little bit of wear and tear that your soul can take. Think of it as you working out. If you do a normal exercise, you're not going to get any weaker. You'll slowly build up those muscles. Same thing with your mana. But if you start doing too much working out, if you push too hard, you can cause fractures and breakages. You will shear off pieces of your soul while casting spells, which if you die from doing this, you can literally have your soul rent from your body, consumed in the magic that you were attempting to cast. That's a really cool description for just essentially, I ran out of hit points because I rolled too low on my spell casting check. But naturally, because that's how I described it, you have the question, what happens if your soul is rent from your body? So I came up with what's called the Soul Scarred. They're kind of like mana vampires that if a body isn't prepared right, it will rise back up and seek out those with a lot of mana to drain them to try to get back some of its life force.
Ooh.
And like all that came about because I wanted to have a problem if you failed to cast a spell. All that cool lore. I had to make a god of magic. Now people explain why wizards are bad because people are like, oh, if you cast too much spells, your soul gets short off, and oh, this is why we don't like wizards in this setting now. All this stuff came about because of a mechanic. It's like, Go ahead.
I don't want to ask too many questions of your specific
Okay.
mechanics, but can they like harvest the souls of other people to power their spells instead of their own?
You see, that's the interesting part. You can. And that is why you have so many evil cults sacrificing people. However, because the soul is unwilling, you don't get the full soul power. You get more than a daily's worth of it, but you just rip them out. And it gives you basically a quick boost instead of being able to train them and have longer term stuff. It's the idea of the evil people will want more power quicker, but good people can get more power overall if they take longer time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, this is how our blood sacrifices come from. This is why so many monsters want to kill people and to consume them so they can recharge their souls, all that stuff. So, my God, James, I don't even know how to read that comment. Okay, so my GM in my Warlock game did say there could be a major milestone where I could start to negotiate a bit of out of my contract and not be a enjoyment device.
And not receive abuse.
James,
Yeah.
you poor choice of words. Let's put it like that.
It's
Very
funny.
poor choice
Yeah.
of words.
It's funny. I can't say it though. Sir, this is a YouTube live stream. Yeah.
Yeah, if you agree with your GM, they can make a lot of mechanics and paths through the story to allow these things to happen. That's part of why it's so important to discuss things with your game master, just so that can be built in a natural way. There's a lot of stuff that they'll probably say no to, but
yeah, and honestly, this is why you can't have like an AI run your dungeons. You can't have there will never be a computer program that'll be as good as this handcrafted content. As good and as fun as Baldur's Gate 3 is, it's nothing like having a game master who can make perfect custom content for you on the fly. That's why having a friend who's your game master like this is so important. You can talk to them, you can bounce off of them, and you can get really fine-tuned stuff. So, yeah. Wolf, if you if you ever want more plastic crack, I think I got some old orc bits I can send you. You could make, have a bunch of orc skulls and orc arms laying around the battlefield. I think you should still be the Space Wolves. But yeah. Oh man, Warhammer, that's a wild hobby. That's another game that was super important to the RPG industry. Warhammer is like strangely important. It gets forgotten about a lot, but it does so many things like just that influenced everything else. Basically, if you were not influenced by D&D or Tolkien, Warhammer comes out of it, which is strange. Because like Warhammer very much exists to not be sued by everybody else, which is funny considering how they are nowadays. Because what happened is they were selling. There was a D&D fan magazine in the United Kingdom. Then D&D said, "Hey, you're the only people in the United Kingdom who know who we are. Would you please sell our books for us?" So then they started selling books and making a lot of money. And then D&D got greedy, TSR, and they said, well, we should sell them there ourselves. So then they set up their own shop there, which now cut out Games Workshop. The Games Workshop said, crap, we need to develop our own D&D, but not D&D, so we can sell it to make money again. So, yeah.
And this is how you end up with the off-brand Terminator faction.
So many off-brand stuff. Oh, BattleTech is super important, but mostly for wargaming stuff. BattleTech does not have the it does have the RPG stuff, but that is not as important to BattleTech as the wargaming things. In fact, Razorfist actually just had one of the guys who created a lot of the BattleTech lore on his show to talk about their new projects, because unfortunately BattleTech has been co-opted by some fellow travelers. If you haven't seen that yet, Pat, you'd be really interested in that. Their new stuff they got, I think it's called Land, Sea, and Air. I know you love BattleTech and that stuff. Yeah. It's really cool. Apparently, they've only done lore books so far. They've done no models, because they said, we want to get the lore right. We want to get you excited about it. Then we will sell you the models.
That seems reasonable.
That's
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I intend to do it with my game. I intend to sell the game and the books first, and then maybe at some later date I'll do some modeling and whatnot.
It's funny because I have a feeling that because you're a fellow author and you've got some stuff, you probably could get Razor to bring you on his show, because Razor's he started a brand new show that is called like the Iron Age, podcast essentially, where he wants to bring new creators on who are part of this Iron Age thing. Your products, even though you don't probably ascribe to it yet, totally fit the Iron Age.
Is that so?
Yes, because it is a tacit rejection of the current corporate landscape, the way fantasy and sci-fi in your case is being told. You want to work outside of it. You want to go back to the iron of the nuts and the bolts. You just want to have stories that are good and enjoyable. They don't need to be the golden age and the silver age where they're shiny and all this high thing. No. You just want to tell good, solid stuff. That's why I got the moniker Iron Age. And there's a lot of gaming and a lot of stuff like that of people who they don't necessarily not want to be part of the thing, but they don't care about the mainstream anymore. They would rather be independently successful. Not like Cine, where Cine wants to be part of an alternative sphere. It's not that. It's you're still basically telling stories that have been told forever that for some reason we can't tell anymore. Because you don't have the right, skin tone or sexuality that you've been canceled for, or that you're not going to be picked up for. That's the idea behind it.
I understand that you want these old patriarchal, heteronormative ways, but they need to end, kid. Okay.
I refuse.
Evil,
Wait a second. As of 2 days ago, PAG is now literally the patriarchy.
Oh yeah!
Oh my goodness, you're right. Oh my goodness.
I really oppressed that baby right into my wife.
Exactly.
You did, I'm sure you oppressed that baby into her, I'll say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you should definitely check out their new stuff, because you'd probably find it fun. And
that's Iron Age.
Well,
Iron Age gaming.
Well, no, Iron Age is it's like you know how comics have the Golden Age and the Silver Age. It's a general name for this new products coming out. But Blaine Pardoe is the guy who wrote the stuff. I think it's Land, Sea, and Air is the name of his new stuff. Those books you could check it out. And I know Razorfist specifically is talking about it. I think there's a website for Iron Age Media as well. And I think they got a podcast, they got a newsletters. If you wanted to instead of fighting publishers to try to get some clout there, that would be where I'd put my resources towards talking to those guys and at the very least asking them, hey, how did you get published? How have you gotten stuff out here? What are distribution methods? Things like that. And Race just put it the podcast, I think, today. And that's why I was saying, this is some good stuff. This is where I would, at least I watched it today. This is where I would focus my energy on if I was you. For that stuff, anyway. Obviously, you have a kid and wife. They need your energy, too.
Yeah, that's going to be the primary focus for a little while.
At least 2 more
Are
days.
Are you telling me that the primary focus is going to be on your newborn child? That's crazy. That's wild. I can't imagine how you could even say that, really. It's truly...
Just, make sure you get enough sleep. That's important when you want to deal with stressful situations.
The most important thing is to go get some milk and cigarettes. Now is the time. There's never going to be a better time.
Exactly. All right, so chat, it looks like you guys don't really have any problems. It's nice to hear that everybody who watches the show has perfect home games and never has any issues except for James. Thank you, James, for providing all the content tonight.
Let's see. World building.
I can always do, just talk about more general topics too, of course, but it's funny. I thought there was going to be more people who complained and had issues hey, my players have done this. I could use some help, because I usually get a lot of people asking those questions. So I figured that maybe tonight people would, ask them in the chat. You can always DM me on Discord if you're too afraid to post your questions in a public server. I will read them out, but I'll leave your name out of it, I promise.
But to DM him, you have to,
join the
be
Discord.
In the server to message him. So join the server. Shill.
Exactly. See? Reggie's a player. He's got it. He understands. I'm a player. No thoughts. Brain M.
Look, Reggie is very much a no thoughts, brain empty. I've known him many a year.
That's okay.
Yeah.
He seems like a good boy. Is he in the server?
He's in the server, yeah.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Is there any... maybe this is not helpful, but do you think there's any good way to link how you build your story to... no. Your world building, how to use the right... ideas from it to make your monsters? If I don't know how to word this.
So I think that I know what you're trying to say. How do you make mechanics and ideas how that reinforces monster design, right?
Yeah, essentially.
So it's funny you bring that up. That's actually one of the key things that I'm working on right now for my game. My game's at a complete enough state that I don't have to worry about core mechanics suddenly melting and being weird and not functioning anymore. So I'm trying to figure out how do you design monsters. Not the video coming out tomorrow, but the video coming out in a week from tomorrow. I may touch on this a little bit, but I'll give a little bit of inside baseball for those of you who are watching with us tonight. One of the key things that I think you should do as a game master is attack your entire character sheet. Everything on there should be fair game for you to strike at as a game master. Not every monster, of course, but don't just go after their hit points. There's this combat encounter I suggest, which is a golden wraith. That this wraith, as it comes up, it does its normal attacks, but instead of attacking and draining 12 hit points, it drains $20 from the player's pockets. And every time it strikes, it just starts stealing your gold. The players will literally never forget that fight if you have that with them. They will hate that thing, they will hate you, and they'll hate everything in a good way.
Yeah, one time I realized that my party didn't have any ability to do any AoE. So I started sending swarms at them.
Yeah.
And swarms do not... you can't target swarms with single target attacks. You just can't.
Really?
So so basically they went into this dungeon all cocky and strutting around, and then they found a bunch of swarms, and they were like, yeah, fuck that place. We're leaving. We're never coming back. You guys can deal with it on your own. They literally left the island that the dungeon was on instead of doing it and ruining their reputation. They were like, we're just gone. You can believe
I'm
that
gonna
we're
buy
dead.
some grenades. You win. I'm done. I refuse to learn Fireball.
We probably have a wizard, and he could just probably get a spell for this, but nah.
Some spell scrolls, because I'm guessing it was 3.5 based on the Swarm mechanics or Pathfinder. Scrolls are
Yeah, it's
cheap as
3.5.
hell. Or just get a
I
wand.
don't think that they had like a real caster. I think they had Weebu fighting magic, and I think they were doing spheres, and so they had very specific things with spheres.
So that's fine, but like, go get a scroll. Anybody can use a scroll in that game. Use magic device is a skill, and I'm sure somebody has points in it by accident. Like whoever has a high charisma could use it. Like, but yeah. So just like I was saying, attack more than just your player character stuff, like your hit points. Shades are routinely considered one of the hardest and most lethal enemies in the game, even though they're like level 2, because they drain strength. And for some reason, nobody can figure out how to not get punched by a shadow. So, like, a shadow will just touch them and drain 4 strength, and then players all decide to dump that one stat. Intellect Devour is another fantastic one. Intelligence is almost always dumped, and every time it bites you, it deals like a D4 of intelligence damage. So you can immediately have players become brain damaged, which is just, besides funny as a statement, it's a really interesting way to give them a combat encounter that they're not used to, and it reminds them just how vulnerable they all are. In fact, the fun thing that I'm going to reveal here, Sphinxes in my setting have a special thing. Their attacks after they hit you, they deal normal damage, of course, but they add 10 years to your life every hit.
Oh.
So a group of goblins fighting a Sphinx are screwed, because they only live to like 70. But an elf who lives to 200, the effects are still a little bit lesser. But still, imagine if I told you, yeah, you have to fight this thing, but if it touches you, you lose 10 years of your life. And it can do that 3 times around. Claw, claw, bite. Are you going to go fight that thing? That immediately sets to the players, that anybody who's like, yeah, I'm the melee guy, I'm going to be the tank and stuff, they're going to be like, no, I don't want to do this. We need to find another way. We need to talk to the Sphinx.
I imagine a world that had those, that to just like link it a little to world building, would probably be a lot more focused on trying to find some method of eternal youth, just because aging is inherently a bigger concern for them, because it can happen at any moment.
It depends on how Sphinxes work. Sphinxes should be like dragons, essentially, in to my eyes. Rare, secluded in the woods, and maybe like one of them will come up and terrorize a town, so heroes have to go deal with it. It's not a thing that they have to deal with every day, that you have every time you walk out of your house, you got to fight 5 Sphinxes to go buy some milk. No.
It's not the goblins who are going to be like the Huns who, when you want to go out to get, a glass of milk, they're going to be raiding your town.
Exactly.
It's going to be a lot there. Yeah.
It's not like Pokemon, where every time you walk through the grass, an elder god can show up. I will catch you one day, Latios. But yeah, on that subject, this is also a beneficial thing because it allows you to realize like where your players' weaknesses truly lie, and it's a lot of fun when you can have a big bad guy who's really smart who figures this out. And I had one time where a player was basically a wizard, just to keep it simple. He was super powerful wizard, just dominating the field. So the bad guy, who was like kind of like an alchemist necromancer dude, he took one of his greatest boxers and magically fused him with a rattlesnake. So the guy had like a really bendy body who could grapple people well. And he teleported that guy next to the wizard, then had some regular soldiers show up. So the wizard had this like dude, boa constrict wrap around him while he had boxing gloves on. So he's punching the wizard in the face while the wizard's been constricted in place. And the rest of the party is just kind of like, well, sucks for you, Mr. Wizard. We got to deal with the rest of the stuff. It was very funny. Oh yeah, not all fair. You're right about the riddles. Don't worry. So I really hate how terrible the monster manuals are for almost every single D&D game or clone like it. They have like vagaries or some like hints of story. They don't actually give you any workable things. When I make my monsters, each one is going to be a 2-page spread. I want a picture on one side. I want statistics. I want plot points. Quest ideas. I want a box that tells you, here's what you know about the monster, with DCs for each thing. So, like, if you do a knowledge religion check on an angel, here's what you know about angels based on your role. Here's some false information you know. If your players screw up, and here's some suggestions on information to change for your setting. All these different things should be on that 2-page spread. So when you look at this monster, you can be like, yes, I have everything I need here to run this Sphinx. All I got to do is read these 2 pages. It's frustrating that D&D has stuff like, I think there's 19 different Sphinx types. Why?
Oh,
Who cares?
Oh, you don't like cryosphinxes and hydrosphinxes
And
whatnot?
androsphinxes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important that I have a different name for a sphinx that can do fire damage. Instead of just saying it with one sentence, if you want to, let the thing do an elemental damage. I need an entire other stat block for that, I promise. We're definitely not padding our book count here. Gosh. There's a reason Pathfinder had 6 bestiaries, and it's not because they had 6 bestiaries worth of cool ideas.
shame.
They had like 3.5 cool ideas worth of bestiaries, and then they said, well, what if we had just added bloat? A lot of great art, though. Pathfinder crushed it with art in 1st edition. But, yeah. A lot of goofy stuff. All right, everybody. So if there's no more questions and comments in chat, and I've noticed James has been talking Pag's ear off in Pag server, which is fantastic. Learning all about Vampire the Masquerade and its fun things. You know, I think I should probably make a video on RPG history one of these days. I want to pick up the other books first so I can make sure I read a lot of the sources.
I think that's actually a great video because I'm not too familiar with a lot of the RPG history, so I feel like that would be maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like it's too.
It's fascinating, but the problem is a lot of the modern people who talk about it politicize the hell out of it. You know, they want to. You basically get 2 groups of people who talk about RPG history now. Obviously, not the scholarly guys who write books. I'm talking YouTuber stuff. People who want to. Yeah, the pop history guys. They want to either glorify Gary Gygax to the point where it makes him seem like a transcendental being who was given more gifts than Jesus, or they want to tear him down and make him like just this demon who stole from all of his friends and family. It's like, I'm pretty sure neither one's true.
I was gonna say, like, you've mentioned a couple times the Gary Gygax controversy to just in private mainly.
I think
And,
he's
like-
overly hated. It's like he's like
right, and
George.
with that,
He's like a
it seemed-
yeah, he's just George Lucas. People hate Lucas for the wrong reasons. Lucas has made some terrible choices, but he's not like a terrible monster of a person.
yeah, like a lot of what you've mentioned about him, it seems like he's like overhated and all this stuff. So
That reminds me, I really thought about making tonight's video on this, but I think
Oh.
I'll have to do a future stream on this.
On what?
Wizards and Warriors put out a video that they're the guys who are the kings and generals who make okay content. I wanted to punch the screen when I was watching it today, guys. It was talking
Oh,
about
no.
the political influences that made Star Wars. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a fun thing. Obviously, you're like, oh, stormtroopers, those are some mid-century Germans. Yeah, thanks. They then said that, and I gotta find the source that they got this from, because I guarantee they took it out of context. Like George Lucas talked a lot about, especially in this one interview here with Stanley Kubrick that we're not going to show any clips from, that the rebels are basically the Viet Cong, and that the Empire, therefore, would be the French imperialists. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, but he specifically said, and I remember him saying this, I gave the Empire English accents and the rebels American accents because I feel like it would mirror the American Revolution and people would understand it better. I know.
I've heard there's some Vietnam stuff, but I feel like as a Vietnam like comparison, it doesn't really work very well.
Vietnam
I mean,
War was
even in-
happening at the time, though. Like, of course, there's going to be some influence, But to say that the rebellion is just the Viet Cong, I don't think so.
Yeah,
And I think it's
doesn't
important
work as a
to note
comparison.
that the American Revolution, a lot of why there was a lot of advantages on our home territory was the American army was very well. They did a lot of the same things that you would nowadays say that the Viet Cong did. They didn't quite follow the rules of war as they had previously been established, which is why the British ended up having difficulty fighting them. The British would line up, they'd be march forward to go forth and do battle. But
sniped
the
them.
Americans were very prone. Yeah, exactly.
Ever. The Viet Cong, the American Revolution, as Theo just said, even the modern Afghan soldiers, any revolutionary group who's fighting against a greater power will have naturally developed similar tactics because these are the best ways to fight against powers. But the thing gets weird in the video. It starts talking about how the Empire is extremely fascistic, and instead of all of these very obvious examples, they say, as you can see, they developed the Death Star, which is a super weapon, and fascists love super projects. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, really, really, that's your proof. That right there, not the militarism, not the slavery, not the fact that they wiped out all the governors, not the fact that they kill everybody at gunpoint and do executions, the fact that they built a super project.
Why
Sure.
the super project? That's not even a good example. America had a super project. We dropped it on Japan. What do you mean?
Hey, but don't you know, America is a fascist empire. I don't know if you know.
my
And
bad,
then-
you're right. You got me
And then in
there.
the Cold War, both Russia,
Hail,
the
Biden.
USSR, and America were trying to develop more nuclear weapons.
Everyone was trying to
That's what I'm
develop
saying.
nukes because it's a nuke.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm listening to this video, and I'm like, man, what source did you get this from? Like, and then they're like, oh, well, the CIS, they were talking about, and this is how you can tell the guys did no research. Like, they only cared about trade routes. Oh, that's it.
No,
That's the only thing they
what?
cared about. Okay.
No, that's what the Trade Federation cared about, not the CIS.
The Trade Federation is
I'm sorry,
part of the
you get me into Star Wars.
CIS.
I've read a lot about
Oh, it gets
Star
better.
Wars.
You're not even done yet. So they said this is Lucas tacitly giving a critique of capitalist systems and how their corruption can influence the current democratic things. And I'm sitting there like, the hell do you mean? They rebelled against them. The CIS specifically led a rebellion against the Republic.
That's so confusing because like if you, because like
It's so frustrating.
It's shown that the Republic are corrupt, but like, how is that a? That's the corruption isn't why the CIS left. I mean,
And then
kind of
it's
was
better
in some places, but
because they're like,
still.
oh yes, Palpatine is just like Adolf Hitler because he used the attack on Naboo like the Reichstag and fire. It's like, okay, so we don't even know if the Reichstag fire was started by Hitler. He may have just exploited a normal tragedy that happened, but sure, I'll give you that. They then go from there and say, and he used after Naboo, he used the strings of democracy to take over, as all fascists do. Like, oh really? All fascists? They just love democracy, these fascists, huh? What are you talking about? I'm just listening to them talk, and it's infuriating. And I kind of want to find the book that they referenced in the video because like this video is mostly based on this book, and I got to see, were they stupid or was this book stupid? And like, who do I yell at correctly? Because like they just say stuff like that, and I'm just listening to it I'm waiting at the doctor's office this morning just for a checkup, nothing bad, and I'm just sitting like, what are you talking about? I'm just confused. It's just frustrating to listen to them talk about stuff, and they're like, "Oh yes, and the EU proves this out too," but then they never talk about how it's proved out there. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, the Republic is shown as being a corrupt, evil regime because they allow slavery on Tatooine. They don't own Tatooine."
Yeah, they're not. Tatooine's not part of the Republic. What?
And then
to be in their defense, I will say there is slavery in the Republic, but you go for Ryloth for that. You don't go for Tatooine.
that's like. That's not even the thing. They talked about Tatooine. They focused
No,
on
but
that.
that's what I mean.
They then
Like, if
said
you're
that the
gonna
Jedi are
criticize the
evil.
Republic, that's what I mean. That's what I mean, though. If you're gonna like criticize the Republic or the Jedi for allowing slavery, you don't go for Tatooine because Tatooine isn't in the Republic. You go for Ryloth because Ryloth is in the Republic, and they do have slavery, and they
Better. You're not ready for this. Because then they said that the Jedi are clearly evil because instead of overthrowing a slave society, they participated in it because they freed Anakin and his mother.
Huh?
Oh
What?
no!
I'm sorry. You're gonna need to run that one by me again.
The Jedi are naturally evil because instead of overthrowing the slave society they found, they participated in it by freeing Anakin and his mother.
That's interesting.
Like-
Interesting take.
I'm sitting there
Going
looking at it
back
like,
to,
what's
like-
wrong with you? Ugh.
So I looked it up because I knew I had a book. I did hear that the Nazis did burn down. I'm sorry, we weren't supposed to say
The
that
Reichs,
word.
yeah, sorry, the Reichstag, yeah. So
The
it's
Reichstag
there's a lot of
fire
people think it
was
happened,
from-
but some people don't. Like there's enough gray area there. Like I said, that I
Okay.
don't know. I haven't looked into it enough,
I-
but I was willing to give them
only
that. Well, I was gonna say I'm willing to give them that Hitler started the Reichstag fire for their Palpatine started the Naboo invasion. I'm willing to give them that because they say some insane shit based on that. By the way, yes, Alfarius,
yeah.
Tatooine is part of Hutt space.
Yeah, Tatooine's perfect because like that's where Jabba the Hutt, and even before Jabba, that's where not Zero. Who's the other Hutt? She
many
dies
Hutts,
in
dude?
There are a lot of Hutts. She dies in she's in episode 1 actually. I can't think of her name though off the top of my head.
Did you guys know that
Dies
the
in
Illuminati
Jango's game. Huh?
Did you guys know that the Illuminati is in Star Wars?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, there's literally the Illuminati. I ran a Star Wars game in my game, and I just ran into that while looking at lore, and I was like, "Are you fucking for real? Like, why does this exist?"
That's funny.
There are 2 canonical deaths for Chewbacca and Han in Star Wars. There's the,
Really?
Yeah, there's the true canon, that's as it's called, where Han died naturally of old age and Chewbacca had the moon crush him. That's a long story, but Chewbacca had the moon kill him. The second one is Chewie and Han took a hyperspace route that was collapsing.
Oh, I know what you're
that
talking about.
sent them
Dude,
through a
Star
slipstream.
Wars Tales slaps. I love Star Wars Tales.
No, it's better. They went through the slipstream
I've read
and
it. I
then
know
ended
exactly
up
what you're
sending
talking
them
about.
to Earth. And they crashed in the Mesoamerica. Han died on impact, and the Mesoamericans, with the help of Chewbacca, built a temple around there. Chewbacca wanted to carve some sigils in the side of it to honor his friends R2 and C-3PO, and he left it there to then go become Sasquatch. So Chewbacca is Sasquatch, and that temple was then found by Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Indiana Jones finds it. Yeah, that comic is great. That's a great comic. I love that comic.
I'm looking at this, and
It's so good.
it's like kind of
Star
canon,
Wars
it's not.
Tales
It's
is so
fascinating.
It's not kind of canon. It's not canon. Like half the stories in Star Wars
Here's
Tales
the
are
thing.
not canon, but there's
It's-
a lot of fun.
It's
stories in
all canon until Lucas says something, because officially the EU had some like this is probably canon. They had agreed upon stuff, but that came out so far later that it technically oversees other canonical stuff, which is fascinating. By the way, Alfarius is right. It's Gardula the Hutt that you were thinking of.
Duel. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think of the name. Still didn't
There's
find it
so
at this
much
point.
stuff like that in Star Wars is like deep lore. One of my favorite things is they will never write gold like this. You're right, Alfarius. There's the dragons. So I don't remember the context, but at one point the heroes need to travel in hyperspace with their ship's gone. So they make a friendship deal with Puff the Magic Space Dragon, who allows them to ride inside his mouth while he takes them through hyperspace.
Mhm.
This is real. The Magic Space Dragons are referenced later on as part of a joke. But yeah, there are Magic Space Dragons that can go through hyperspace. And you thought the whales were dumb.
The EU was crazy. There's a lot of crazy stuff in the EU. I've read quite a bit of it, mainly on the comic side. The
Oh,
book side, I was starting to get through, and then I got distracted by history, and
Okay.
maybe I'll go back to it at some point. But it's history, so.
oh man. Well, with that sour note, I should end the podcast tonight, I think. End the episode with
Good.
Star Wars got ruined again. So with that, I would like to thank all of my fantastic guests for joining us tonight. And I would like to thank all of you for tuning in and joining us in the chat. Thank you for the great questions and the great comments.